Hello, and welcome to the Awaken to Your Body's Wisdom podcast. So this is part 2, where I got to have my second conversation with Shelly Prosko. If you remember in part 1, Shelly talked a lot about, and we discussed self-compassion and yoga therapy specifically, and we really wanted to devote more time to the conversation around yoga and science in pain care. Specifically her book, Yoga and Science in Pain Care, Treating the Person in Pain, that she co-edited with Neil Pearson and Marlisa Sullivan. And so in this episode is the first of a series of 6, where I'll be discussing with experts who work with people with pain and study chronic and persistent pain, and those who live the experience of living with persistent pain. And I'm just so grateful for Shelly's mentorship, for her support. She really has facilitated this 6-part series in connecting me with a few individuals. And I really think starting with her conversation will really set the tone for this 6-part series. So if you have those that in your life that are living with persistent pain, this might be something that this series might support or help them. But also just wanted to make everybody aware there might be some triggers here. If you're someone who lives with pain and you hear us talking about it, there might be some triggers. So just a warning for those that maybe are on a different places in their journey living with pain. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Shelly Prosko. So welcome back, part 2.
Here we go. Let's do this.
So we're going to dive into the book that we didn't have enough time to explore in part 1, which is Yoga and Science in Pain Care, Treating the Person in Pain. And you co-edited this with Neil Pearson and Marlisa Sullivan. And there's, lots of contributors in this book, and it's available on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Amazon, but if you're not an Amazon person, you can, get it if you're in Canada, you can get it through UBC Press and Barnes and Noble, like all those. If you go to my website, you can find all the different links where you can get it on there. And I actually have a box of books here at home that I'm selling. So I'll sign it and I can share it too. I'll send it, I'll mail it to you. So we should normally do that at the end, but hey, we'll get it over with.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So everybody listens to the beginning. But yeah, I wanted to dive more into this, and specifically, I want to dive into right initially the title, Yoga and Science. So for some people listening, those might seem like they're in conflict with one another, or maybe they conflict with some people's preconceived notions of what yoga might be. Why was it important to have that in the title, Yoga and Science?
Yeah, well, that's a great place to start. So if we go back to why we wrote this book, or some of the intentions behind why the three of us wanted to do this, maybe we'll just start with that, like a little bit of background. So, the three of us have worked. So the three of us are physiotherapists and yoga therapists. And we're also, all three of us are continuing education providers. So we're both clinicians integrating yoga into our physiotherapy, or integrating yoga therapy into healthcare. And like I said, the three of us are clinicians, and also we teach courses to healthcare providers and to yoga professionals. So, Neil and I teach in a variety of yoga therapy schools, and Marlisa is one of the professors at Maryland University of Integrative Health, which has a Master's of Science in Yoga Therapy. So, this is our work, this is what we do. So when we wanted to write this book on, how can we integrate, or how can we share this knowledge of integrating yoga therapy into pain care? One of the things that we feel is really important is increasing pain literacy, or increasing the professionals' understanding of pain, both healthcare professionals and yoga therapists, but just sticking with right now with the yoga professional community, we thought it was really important to bring the contemporary views around pain, instead of there's a lot of outdated views of pain, not just in the yoga world, like in our whole culture and society, and in healthcare too. But we wanted to bring, we thought it was really valuable, because this is what we do with our work when we teach in these yoga programs. We teach about these contemporary views around pain, you know, the science around pain, helping yoga professionals understand what the new views are. And that's important, because if we can understand pain more and the lived experience of pain, so meaning, you know, listening to people in pain and their stories, if we can better understand that, we can better understand not just pain, but people in pain, and that can improve our pain care. So even as yoga teachers or yoga therapists, if we're working with people in pain, that's going to make us better yoga professionals. So we wanted to bring the science piece to the yoga world and show how they complement one another. So we with every chapter, almost every chapter, we're really working hard at saying, look, this is what the science is saying, and this is what yoga teaches us. This is the philosophy, the teachings, and the practices. Look, like, we're so excited, you know, look, it's in line. Like, there's so many gaps in our current healthcare and pain care system, and that yoga can fill those gaps. So that's that. And then we also wanted to bring the yoga teachings and practices to the healthcare community. So this book is both for healthcare professionals and yoga professionals. So that way, healthcare professionals who are maybe interested in yoga, maybe a deeper dive, maybe they want to do what you and I are doing, and our colleagues, you know, and really get deep into it, or maybe they just want more tools. Maybe they just want to borrow some of the practices that yoga can offer and help enhance their pain care. So so the blend, we're bridge builders. So the blend of yoga and science in pain care, it really just does enhance our quality of care and helping us all better help people in pain.
I mean, like you, I'm into this stuff. So like, for me, this is like, I just love it. But for some people that this is maybe a new topic or a new blend. You talked a little bit about the old views or outdated views of pain and our new views. I mean, I can speak to a couple of the old views, and maybe if you can think of some, jump in as well. But I remember going through first graduating school, and I worked at a multidisciplinary clinic, and we would have at this tertiary center education sessions with the clients. And part of those education sessions was talking about chronic pain, quote unquote. And the science at that time, I remember specifically, they said 60% of you will not get better, and 40% of you will improve but still have pain, and then 5%, you know, it just was like these very percentage based, and like setting it out from the get-go. I just remember those percentages sticking out, and talking a lot as a practitioner. We would hear a lot about pain behaviors, and so those are some old views that come to mind. Are there any old views that come to mind to you that maybe we can speak on to highlight for people?
Yeah, so I think the first things that come to mind are, well, the first one is that pain is linear, or that pain is equated to the amount of tissue damage. So we look at, you know, typically we think, oh, you know, we stub our toe, we fracture a bone, we get a paper cut, like there's going to be a certain amount of damage, and that's going to equate to pain. But what we know now is that the amount of pain we have, or the pain we have, if we have it or not, and the intensity, and, you know, so the whole, everything about pain, the quality of it, the intensity of it, it does not directly correlate with the state of the tissue. So we can have a very profound injury, you know, tissue damage, and no pain or not a lot of pain. We can, and the reverse is true. So we can have really no tissue damage or injury or anything, and we can have a lot of pain. You know, think of things like a brain freeze, very painful. If you think of, you know, the brain freeze when we drink something too cold too fast, hits the roof of our mouth. I mean, it's excruciating pain in our head, and you know, there's no tissue damage. Or like a paper cut. It's pretty excruciating. Certain ones can be really painful, and sure, there's a little bit of skin damage there, but I mean, it's gone and it goes away. Even stubbing a toe. Now I broke my pinky toe not too long ago, so there was damage there. It was fractured, but think of when you do stub a toe and you may not even get a bruise, or nothing, but it hurts and there's no tissue damage. And we could go on. And then the reverse is true as well. I won't get into stories, but there are, stories where people can have a lot of tissue damage or injury without any pain. And maybe just to get everybody's mind thinking a little bit, if you think of a time when maybe you had a bruise, and you don't remember at all where that came from. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Our nervous system works on a priority basis. Just think if you're, let's say you even sprained or fractured your ankle or something, but you're running across the street and there's a big truck coming, you're not going to feel that pain, that it won't register. So, okay. So that's the first kind of outdated view. And we took that in school in the 90s, the views was that pain was more linear. And we know now for 20 years now, we know from the research that pain is complex. We also know that pain is now an output. So we used to think more of pain as an input, like pain signals or pain nerves or pain receptors. And there's no such thing as that. There's no pain nerves. There's no pain receptors. There's no pain signals that come in and go up to the brain. There's nociception, or there's what we call the danger detection system. So we have receptors, but they just detect stimuli all the time. Right now, you and I, everyone listening, there's lots of nociception going up to the spinal cord into our brain, but pain is an output. So the pain experience, it's complex. It's an output of, we used to say the brain, but some of the leading pain researchers like Lorimer Moseley talks about now, he says pain is an output of the human, because we don't want to get too brain centric, and so we're like, pain is an output of the human. So it's complex, it's an experience, it's an output, and it is real. Not that this is a new, something new. You're asking for some of the new views, but it's really important to insert this here. It's not all in your head, because when we start learning about some of these more contemporary views, like that it's an output, then the danger messages go up the spinal cord, they're processed. There's lots of stuff that goes on in the spinal cord, like a whole bunch of interneurons and a whole bunch of messages coming down from the brain into that area of the spinal cord to say, hey, is this dangerous? Should we make it go up, or nah, it's not, it's okay. We don't have to worry about this, human. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So then if it says, yes, it's dangerous, it passes up. We still don't feel pain yet. It passes up to the brain. And then the brain has hundreds of areas. It has to make sense of this message. So it takes into consideration the state of our nervous system, all of our physiological state in general, our immune system, hormonal system, our emotions that we have at that moment, like our mood, our thoughts, our past beliefs, our expectations, all kinds of things, all of our past experiences, maybe in that context of that same situation, etc. So it's really complex. And then the output is the pain, is the pain experience and any other protection alarm. So it could be our breathing changes. It could be fear. Anxiety is another output. It could be vomiting. It could be our legs give out and go weak. It could be, all guarding or spasming, inflammation. So the pain. So back to that question, the new idea here is now we know that pain is complex. It's an output, and it's a message saying, trying to get our attention. But it doesn't tell us what the problem is. It doesn't tell us where the problem is or how bad the problem is. It's just a messenger. So that's a good place to maybe get us started. And
yeah, I think there's a couple of things I want to highlight. So, because when you said it's all in your head, that was also one of the outdated things I wanted to touch on. And I think we'll come back to highlighting that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the new views, because I really want to spend time in the new views and interventions and how we're, just how things have changed and the potentials and the empowerment that comes with that. But I think that we're kind of at this transition, at least this is my own perception, in our healthcare system. I feel that some of the ways of treating are not conducive to this new view of pain, and just even the conceptualization, and there's a lot of things that our health system is like slowly growing into. It's behind where we are at as a population. I feel, just even thinking of things of like inclusivity and access to care and things like that. So this idea of things fitting into a box, or people's pain presentations, or pain experiences fitting into this old view. I think there's some that are moving away, and some systems and people in the system trying to integrate and move into this new view of treating and working with people with pain. But the constraints of the system don't seem to simply meet where we're at. And so this is a bigger question, and I think this book is, I'm holding up to the video that no one's going to see.
I can see it.
This book is doing such a big job in trying to move, like you were saying, it's for health practitioners, trying to move the needle. And I think we need to sometimes first, like in other things, address where we're at right now, the reality of where we're at. I think many people are still in the old views of pain.
Yeah.
And when you said in that pain is real, talk to me a little bit about why that piece is important. And in terms of how it relates to our new view of pain as well, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So I can give you an example. So back in around 2004, 5, somewhere in there, when I started learning about some of these new views. So that's when the book Explain Pain came out. That's Butler and Mosley's book. And that was giving us these. So these are the two most prominent researchers in pain. And they did a phenomenal job at translating their research into a book for us clinicians, and then even another book, Painful Yarns, for the general population. And so not a lot of researchers do that, right? They're not that great at translating the knowledge, but these two researchers did a phenomenal job. So here I am in 2000, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. And where I was working at the time, we had an occupational rehab program, and there's a lot of people there struggling with persisting pain or chronic pain. And so when I started working there, it was mandatory that we all read this Explain Pain book. And great, well-intentioned, amazing, love the place where I was working, like, kudos to that. So there I am, I read it, it blows my mind a little bit, and oh wow, okay. And then you try to translate that into practice. And what did I do, and what do most of us did at that time, and like you said, even now, so people who are transitioning now, trying to learn a little bit more about the new views of pain. What we do is we don't really have a guide, and we don't really know how do we integrate this new information practically in the clinic. Mm-hmm. And what can happen when we're learning this, what I just kind of went through briefly, is how pain is not an input, it's an output. It's a product of it's an output of the brain. And, we have to look at our whole state, and it's really complex. Us clinicians can translate that. We're doing our best. It's well-intentioned, but we can think of that as, oh, okay, so it's in your head then, right? So you have all these messages, but it's really, the brain has to make a story out of it. So then maybe we can just help people reframe pain and change their story. So we're not accusing people or anything, but it's just when we learn this new stuff, we start to think, oh, so it's, let's do what we call top-down approaches, and we do this in the yoga world. Like, okay, well then let's meditate the pain away. Let's do the mind over matter, if this is what the science is telling us. So the danger, first, there's lots of misconceptions there, but the one thing about, pain is real, why we have to keep with that, is we may have the best intentions. So what I did back when I was learning this it didn't happen a lot, but it happened too much, and once is enough, where the person, thank goodness, had the courage to say to me, because I wonder how many people didn't say anything that thought this, but had the courage to say, so you're saying it's all in my head? Or, well, I respect, or they'll say, I respect you, that's fine, whatever you're saying, but I'm different. Like, this isn't in my head. And I'm just like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. And that's just the growing pains of, as clinicians, we're learning new information, and then how do we relate it? So that's really, really important for all of us to understand. So for people listening who are in pain, well, all of us, pain is a normal human condition. This isn't, not everybody has persisting chronic pain, but 1 in 5 people do, approximately, which is a lot. And I can guarantee that everyone listening, we know someone, if it's not us, we know someone who's struggling with persisting pain of some kind. So just know, pain, and the International Association for the Study of Pain has this in there, in the definition. There's like all of these addendums and clarifying statements, and that's one that they've recently added, is like, all pain is real, and pain is what the person says it is.
And let's stop there for a second.
Okay.
Pain is what the person says it is. I just think we need to hear that.
Yeah.
And we need to hear who the person listening who's in pain needs to believe it too, because the head games we play with ourselves, I just need to push through. I just need to, I'm not enough. This can't, and if someone else is telling them it's in your head, and not so many words, but wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Implicit messaging. You're right. Implicit messaging is huge. And I would say the majority of healthcare providers, I would say I don't think there are any healthcare providers out there who have ill intent. Sometimes we may be a little short or impatient. And we talked about this on the last podcast, just, some of our own state, we may be overwhelmed and stressed and what have you. There's all those blocks to compassion response, but I don't think anyone, we intend to not believe the person, but I think it's just important for us to remember over and over and over again, yes, pain it's exactly what the person says it is. And the expert in pain is the person in pain. That we're not the experts. We've got a lot of knowledge from our clinical experience. We have a lot of knowledge, how yoga can help. We have knowledge, what I just kind of explained briefly about the biology, like the neurobiology of pain, but that we're not experts in pain. Pain is, Neil Pearson says, pain is a lot like love. It's a human condition. It's a complex experience. I'm not an expert in your love, just like I'm not an expert in the way you experience pain.
I love that analogy, because sometimes pain closes the doors on a lot of things, but when you compare it to love, it opens up in a different way, just being able to relate to it, because no one wants to relate to pain. A lot of people don't, it's harder too. So that's really, powerful. I want to just spend a little bit more time, just one more question on our health system, medical system, and what you talked about in terms of the old view of, if there isn't tissue damage, then the pain. We used to think that for there to be pain, there had to be a certain level of tissue damage and so on. And our medical system is really designed for acute care and measuring or picking up measurable things. So our blood tests, our tissue damage, our x-rays. And when many practitioners, if I'm someone who knows how to prescribe exercise medication, and the person in front of me I can't find anything to prescribe them, I don't have the tools to help them in that moment. And so I feel like you said, there's not necessarily an ill intent, but a lot of times we aren't armed with the tools, and our system doesn't have the testing to test. And so this might be an out there question, what are the
Are you
yoga
going to
therapy.
ask me for a solution
Yeah. What
to a
are the
complex systems issue? I'm just kidding.
this is a bridging question. What are the yoga therapy tools
Hmm.
used? How can we arm ourselves? How can we start to support practitioners so they have some kind of tool to offer that person in that moment, so it's not a door closed, so it's not, I don't know how to help you, like I'm frustrated because I can't help you and I don't understand it, and go see a psychologist, which is also important, but maybe not the only intervention if you can't help someone's pain. Yeah, so what are some of those tools? How do we get from the old view to the new view? And
Yeah. So, and specifically, are you essentially asking, you know, how does yoga therapy help contribute to pain care? Like, what are the yoga therapy sort of tools? Is that what you're?
yeah, sorry, it's a kind of a long-winded question, but
Yeah, no.
basically, yeah, what are how do we get from the old view in the healthcare system to the new view, and how does yoga therapy provide an avenue to support that?
Okay. Okay. So a little bit maybe two-part to the question almost, right? Like how to get there, and then where does yoga therapy fit in? Okay. So how to get from that's a really big question.
I know it's a big question. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's good. This is okay. So how to get to the old view to the new view? And the reason it's just because there's so many different ways, right? So
Yeah.
let's see how to get, and you can help me here too. I mean, we can brainstorm. So how to get from the old view to the new view? Well, first, okay, and I think I'll just kind of bring in the yoga teachings myself as I think through this. But so I think the one thing we have to do first and foremost is start with ourselves as clinicians. So that's the first thing, and just being curious and being open and being humble, those sorts of things. So just really looking at yourself first, and knowing that we're all on this path, and it's constant learning, right? So I think that's important. You got to start with that open mind and that curiosity. And then I think from there, something a little more tangible would be first, once you have that openness and that motivation or that intention to, okay, I guess, how do we do this? Then from there I think it requires some work on where to find some help. And that's going to depend on your interests. So you and I, of course, and we're going to talk about yoga and how yoga fits in, but it doesn't have to be yoga. So for the clinician who wants to learn more, there's so many things out there, on how to learn. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal continuing education course, although I would highly, highly recommend that. But it could be a course on pain. So there's a lot. I won't get into all the details, the different like companies, organizations and things, but that would be, jot that down for yourself. I just really take something to learn more about pain. Maybe it's self-directed learning. There's a lot of that out there. Pick up, a book, or listen to a free webinar presentation, attend a pain science conference. So things like that. So learning more about pain. And then if you're kind of already have that and you just want to learn more, like what you were saying, not like the tools, again, there's a lot out there in the, I'll say, pain community or the pain science type world. Organizations like Sask Pain, Alberta, or the Pain Society of Alberta, Pain BC, like these organizations who have so many resources for clinicians and for people in pain. But right now we're kind of speaking to the clinician. So many resources on whether they're different tools, and they could be yoga related, different practices, could also be different systems out there like acceptance commitment therapy, psychologically informed physiotherapy practice. We could just go on and on, different podcasts out there that really focus on pain and in rehabilitation. So I don't like, there's some different ones, you know, there's so many podcasts these days and stuff, but there's
Yeah.
some really good ones specifically to that question. So so that just kind of gets me started. I haven't gotten to where yoga therapy fits in, but do you have, just from those few things, do you have any, are you
Yeah.
inspired to?
Well, I think what I'm hearing is, and what I feel too, is the information is there. We just, I
Yes,
think, need to
lots of it.
start. Yeah, and to your point where you said start with ourselves, and it come back to our first podcast where we talked about that self compassion, self awareness, so that we can show up. And here, I think some of those when those blocks are there, then things seem overwhelming and we aren't sure how to solve the problem. So I think what you first started with, that really hit home for me, and the information is there. So whether you're, and like what you said, where, you know, you don't have to be into yoga. We'll get into why it's so awesome, but
Yeah, yeah.
and specifically effective. But yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I'll put some resources at the end of the podcast too. Oh yeah, you're gonna say?
Yeah. And then the other thing, just to piggyback on that, is like, I know you and I are very interested in and passionate about pain and learning more. I mean, that's why we're doing this. But, you know, I would kind of, I'm going to kind of make a statement here, and a bit of an argument, or just a statement. Like, there are certain specialties, like let's say pelvic health, or I don't know. There's just certain specialties that some people may not necessarily be interested in, and say, no, I'm not going to dive deep into, you know, or cardiac rehab, or, you know, pick your. But, and it could be because this is my specialty, so I'm biased, but everybody has pain. Like
Yeah.
that to me is such a foundation. So I just feel like if you are a caring professional, if you're in the healthcare profession, no matter if it's physical rehab or mental health rehab, or social sciences, you know, whatever kind of caregiver, healthcare professional you are, like I said, I might be biased, but I just feel like we owe it to the people we serve, because they're in pain. And remember, pain is an unpleasant physical and emotional experience. So, you know, this is, people are coming to us with pain experience. So that's just my little soapbox. So I do feel it's our duty to learn more, and we're always a student. So that's the other thing I would say to this. On the journey of trying to learn the new views and how to integrate that, is okay, like let's just go and just keep going. Like, you're not going to take one course, or you're not going to, okay, now I've got you know, that technique. So think of a technique, for example, let's think what's something, oh, like needling. So you can take like a dry needling or an acupuncture course, and you can kind of get that under your belt. And I don't know enough about this, so if I'm wrong, sorry to all the needlers out there, but like once you have your course and all the levels or whatever, and once you're done and you've got a lot of clinical practice, you probably don't need to take another needling course, right? Like, you're done, you've got it. But with pain, it's, you know, I would argue it's a little bit different, or it's a lot different, obviously, because we're dealing with this very complex human experience. And so I don't know, I hope that was helpful. I really think that's.
Yeah, it just, what came to mind was a story that I heard from somebody who lives with persistent pain, and he's sharing his story later after this episode. But he said he went to his doctor and he wasn't feeling like he was being heard. And they said, um, they requested a second referral to a different specialist. And the physician said, so you want me to send you a second opinion? And they said, no, I'm asking you to treat me. And when they said, I'm asking you to treat me, they said the physician, you know, it was that moment, oh, you know, that aha moment of like, oh, I'm not, it wasn't another like unhappy customer type thing. It was like, I need to be heard. And what a beautiful interaction though, of them advocating for themselves, and then the physician responding as well, not with ego and defending, but like, okay, you know, I just thought that was such a beautiful moment, and like learning for both. And as we're going through these growing pains, I've also been, oh, I remember doing those education sessions and spewing this stuff that was, you know, it just makes you sick, kind of like what you
It
used to
makes me
say.
sad.
Yeah. And it just,
Mhm.
and so, but you know, instead of defending what, well, that was what this thing was at the time. It's like, no, like I want to remember that and see the person in front of me. And if I don't know the answer, like you said, we don't know the answer. Be humble. I think that was one of the first things you said. Be humble enough to like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to
Mm-hmm.
solve it all on our own. Let's
Mm-hmm.
find the people that's can support.
Yeah, and then this is really good going back and forth, because now the other point I have, so getting back to that first part of the question on, you know, how, like, going from the old views to the new views, like what can people do, some advice. And so here's a really important point. You kind of already alluded to it, but we know now that the lived experience of pain, so listening to that person's story, that's part of the assessment, that's part of the data collection. It's key. So we've already talked about it in the last podcast, you've already mentioned it here, but that's what I would say to clinicians maybe who are kind of looking to, okay, well, you know, yes, still go to the courses or still, but you know, all, if you really want, what you really can do, first step, or second step, I guess, after the first one, looking inwards and starting with yourself. Then the next one is creating a safe space.
Yeah.
So we need time, you know, create a safe space, cultivate patience, and listen. There you go. That is, just start there and listen to understand, not to respond.
Yes.
Right. And just, that's valuable. And we can all do that. We can do that today. Your next clinical encounter, you can do that. And that's pain care. That's starting to move towards the new views.
Yeah.
And we can all do that. You know, and you don't, it takes a skill, but you don't need to go to a course, you know, you do need to practice it and to learn. It's hard. Yeah. And you don't, and I said, you need time. And that's one thing I love about, you know, what you and I do. Like, we've got at least an hour with people. I usually have an hour and a half for the first one. And I, you know, really listen, and we have, you know, a lot of time at the beginning. But let's say you don't, like you were saying earlier, the system isn't set up for that. And let's say you have, if you're a busy physician, and you might have 5 minutes or 10 minutes, maybe a physiotherapist has 20 minutes, but, you know, even in 5 minutes, you can just take a moment. There's some statistic or research that says, I think the average time that a healthcare provider, might be physician, interrupts, I think it's 7 seconds or 11 seconds, like the average time it takes. And, you know, if you just extend that, like even 1 minute, if you know, if you think about it, okay, I have 1 minute, that's profound for the person. So there's something, I think.
I feel excited about what we both came up with there together. I'm glad this is recorded. But no, and so much more, I'm sure. But just, you know, I think it's a really, it feels like an exciting place to start, and super accessible. And obviously I'd love there to be more, you know, anyway, we could go more into it, but
yeah, we can talk about yoga now.
Let's go into the yoga, all the yogas, all the things. But no, let's talk about yoga therapy, yoga in pain care. You've done a lot of work in this area. What are some of the tools, if you want to start there? And if you want to start somewhere else, that's fine too. But what are some of the, first of all, I guess we'll start here. Why yoga for pain care?
Okay, so I will start with the idea that we know when pain persists, it can change all aspects of one's existence. So it can change the, you know, the obvious things that we think of, first of all, the physical part of our being. So even our tissue health, our strength, our mobility, you know, the way our function, even our like how we breathe when pain persists, that, you know, we might hold our breath, we might guard, we might have some body tension. It can change even our, like all of our physiology, right? So it can change, you know, even our immune system, endocrine. So basically just all of our physiological systems. It can also change our mental state, our cognition, our cognitive function. People know that when pain persists, we have the science that says this, but even people listening, if you have pain for a long period of time, it's going to, your ability to focus or concentrate, it even changes parts of your brain where you have trouble with memory, learning, your emotions change. So we've got some evidence that shows, you know, we might have this increased guilt, feelings of self-guilt or shame, increased anger, maybe towards yourself, maybe towards others, fear, anxiety. We know there's a correlation with persisting pain and depression and anxiety. So it changes all aspects of us. And then even like behavior. So, you know, we might start to have fear avoidance type behaviors because it hurts. So we don't want to do that activity. That makes sense, right? And if we don't have the guidance and support to how to navigate that, then that world gets smaller and smaller. So our behaviors change. We stop doing the things we love. We stop being around the people we love because we can't do those activities that they're doing, that they're inviting us to do. So our whole social network can change when pain persists. Our friends change. We lose friends. It makes our world, like I said, get smaller and smaller and can turn it upside down, can be very isolating. So we have evidence too. And we don't need evidence. Like I say, just listen to the stories from people in pain. And this is what they tell us, which is evidence, but that's what we call qualitative evidence. But we know that when pain persists, that the interactions, like we start to feel more what they call perceived social isolation. So we just start to feel more isolated, and the quality of the relationships can reduce. So you might have still a handful of friends, but the quality can reduce. And then when pain persists, also we in yoga, so we call it like our, the spiritual aspect, or that in yoga, we call it that Ananda Maya Kosha, that domain of the human existence, that's our spirit. But when we try to bridge that and talk to people maybe who, don't really, well, what does that mean? And, we say, well, it's this idea of meaning and purpose in life, and your connection to your true self, to others, and then to a divine, or to God, or if you have a certain faith, then you can integrate, that language. But basically, when pain persists, that connection can get what we call maybe spiritual distress, or that connection can get lost. And like I said, a lot of people tell us they feel they have no purpose. I mean, they might not be working as much or anymore. Their role as a father, as a mother, that changes. So you start to feel worthless, purposeless, no hope, helpless. And then there's that spiritual aspect that we say to that, right? It's like you feel like you're broken. So now I took time to go through all that, because that just gives a perfect framework now for, why yoga for pain care? So just rewind the podcast and now insert all those things that I just said. Yeah. And I think it's worth it. I'll try not to take too long, but just worth it to kind of briefly go through kind of that again and say, well, yoga addresses what I just said, all of those aspects. So yoga in and of itself, the teachings, so the philosophy, the framework, and the practices address all aspects of our existence. So the physical, getting back to that, well, we've got movement, we've got, all these different postures, we have breath practices, and we know that all these different practices in yoga can change all aspects of our existence. So we can use movement to change our mood, our emotions. We can use movement to change our cognitive function. We have the science where movement can change not just our musculoskeletal system. Like movement doesn't just change tissue health, although that's one part, but it can even change our immune system. It can change inflammation. Of course, it can also change pain. Like, so, okay, that's huge. And then of course the different breath practices that can change our physiology. Breathing can calm our nervous systems, which can then change pain. Breathing can change how we move. We even know that certain breath practices can change our emotions and again, our cognitive functions. So there's a lot of repetition here, but basically it's all these different practices feed into the system and can change any other aspect of us, which then can change our pain. And then when we look at other practices like meditation type practices, maybe some awareness practices, so body scans or any kind of meditative type practice. We've got a lot of research now showing meditation, the benefits of meditation. So meditation can, in and of itself, change pain. It can help calm our systems. It can change a lot of different parts of our physiology, like our blood pressure, heart rate, and it can also, meditation obviously can help improve our cognitive function. So it can help improve our memory, our ability to focus and pay attention. And it can also help us emotionally regulate. So when pain persists, like I said, a lot of times our brain changes and we just change in a way where we ruminate or catastrophize because there's changes. Like it's real, we're not just making this up in our head. These are real physiological changes that are happening. So these yoga practices, particularly meditation, we know that can help with emotional regulation, and then that can influence our pain. And when pain persists, our awareness can become distorted. So our whole, like our body awareness, like if you ever ask someone if they've had pain for a long time and you ask them to draw a picture of that body part or try to describe it, people will say all kinds of things like, it doesn't feel like mine, or they'll draw the picture and there's a distortion there. It's really quite fascinating. Yeah. And so awareness practices, those are our yoga, different interoceptive awareness practices can potentially help improve that awareness, which again helps to improve or to influence the pain experience. So do you want me to stop there? There's those few others we can talk about, but do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I love it. I love it all. I'm just nodding here profusely. I especially love, you've done such a good job touching on all, so many aspects and speaking to even just a few of the tools that are just part of the yoga system. Like you talked about meditation, movement, breath, the deeper cognitive practices of awareness. And I just want to highlight what you said, that it's changing. We talk about it like it's separate, but when we do something like a visualization, it's lighting up the nervous system. It's changing the physiology, the hormonal expression. Like we talk about the systems as if they're separate, but each intervention you just talked about targets the whole body and the whole human experience. And the more tools we have, the more chances we have to interrupt the pain that day. Oh, today I can't move, but I can breathe. Today I can't do this, but I can visualize. I don't feel safe in my body. I'm going to visualize something that feels safe. That's what I love about the yoga practice, is so many tools to meet the moment and so many tools to meet each person where they're at, whether they're into yoga or not. Like these are just human things. I just wanted to highlight that, and that's what came to me as you were speaking. But you were gonna mention a few other things, I think.
Yeah. So, I think we've hit, like you said, like the sort of that bulk of the practices, the movement, the breathing, the awareness, the meditation. And, I think that I like that. It's simple enough. People can understand that. And then, there's a few other points. And, you and I know we could go forever about, we might have to do a part 3.
Oh my gosh, we're already an hour.
I know. So maybe this will be for part 3, but I think I can make this short. So
No, it's good. Go.
Yeah. So the other thing, why I think, and we have a paper on this, right? They're called white papers. Did you know that we, four of us have so they're like, they're papers. So it's a published paper in a medical peer reviewed journal, and white papers are like, they're papers from subject matter experts. That talk about a problem list, a gap in some kind of knowledge, and then recommendations to different stakeholders. So they're like policy, well, they're not really policy papers, but they can be used for policy change. Anyway, so me and three colleagues wrote a paper on the contributions of yoga therapy to comprehensive integrative pain management. And I mean, that's what we're talking about right now, right? What are the contributions of yoga therapy? So that's good I mentioned that, because we can put that in the show notes for people to read. But here's another thing, and it's the philosophy and the teaching. So we might say yamas and niyamas, but I mean, it's larger than that. But there are a lot of things that yoga can offer in pain care that are so in line with what the science is telling us that people in pain will benefit from. So it's ideas, and we've said this in the last episode, but the self-compassion, we know that can be very, very beneficial. So that's integral in yoga. The language, right? It's rooted in self-compassion and acceptance, santosha, so looking. And so people sometimes think, oh, does that mean, just to, oh, well, I have pain, just accept it. No. There's this larger, right? It's accepting the moment. And then we have research that shows pain acceptance is very helpful for people in pain. And then once you accept, then you move through commitment. What is that? And tapas, right? Discipline, the effort. So we need both. I'm so excited. I am too.
No, okay. It's so great. I just want to, and I want to come back to your last point on that, but the acceptance piece, I find, is the most profound, but the hardest one. I really find that hard to guide people through and with, and there's no timeline. Like you said, it's not linear. And I feel like sometimes that's often one I have to leave and find other avenues. And it seems to be, the one that has the hardest grip, and it's also the one that has the most release. Yeah. But I really found that working with people, that the acceptance of pain, it's almost like at least I feel that it might be, if I accept this pain, it means that I'm giving into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's, so it's finding that feeling safe enough so that we can have those conversations
right
in that way. But that takes a lot of time. But that acceptance piece, I think, is really critical that you touched on there. And then, like you said, the discipline of practice and showing up, and the effort, the work that's required for healing. It's
and the acceptance piece is but if we listen to yoga, what it tells us, like it doesn't tell us that we have to tell someone to accept something. Like that's what I love about yoga, right? And so we have to also remember, like, we're not telling our patients or anyone who's listening right now, like we're not saying that you have to accept your pain. That's not what these messages are.
That's not what this is.
So it's these, but like you said, it's these ideas of, and I mean, each of these yamas and niyamas, or each of these yoga, I mean, you can spend a year on, on how do we cultivate acceptance? What does it mean? How do we cultivate acceptance? How does it feel in your body? How does it show up? And then, like you said, it's a process, and you guide people into, and it's accepting just the reality of the moment. So then you move through it, and then that's the commitment piece, the tapas of, okay, now where's the discipline to do what we need to do to create change. And then that's where the self-compassion comes in. And then the other thing with yoga, it teaches, it's such a beautiful fit for pain care, because it, in essence, we look at it, we didn't even really describe yoga here, and it means so many different things to different people, but the way I see it and the way we describe it in the book in some ways is yoga is this, sure, it's a comprehensive system of health, but yoga really ultimately, it's this journey of self-discovery about gaining deeper insight into your own struggle, right? Into your own life, your struggle, so that then you can alleviate it or prevent future suffering. Right? That's one of the kind of descriptions. So we look at yoga therapy and pain care. And when we look at the philosophy, one thing that yoga really helps us with is discernment.
Mm-hmm.
So a quick example here in pain care, you kind of said this already, like how much to do or how much to move or how little. So when we're faced with pain, so there's a certain movement we want to recover, right? Or there's a certain movement that we want to do, we need to do to be able to function, to be able to lift our children or, you know, do the dishes or put that back up on the shelf or whatever. So, but we can't, there's a lot of pain there and struggle. So when we're recovering this movement and this function, what yoga can help us do is it gives us these guidelines and the language and the practices to help the person. So it's not the clinician giving these external guidelines, right? Like this, do this or don't do that. It's you're giving the person in pain agency and the autonomy to figure out, okay, there's my edge. How much can I go into that edge? Because if you just ignore it all the time, every time it hurts, you back off, like you're never going to recover that movement. And then if you push too much, if you think, well, Shelly and Adrianne were saying that like there's no tissue damage, you know, so might as well just, well, you know what's going to happen there. You're going to, I mean, you're going to have flare-ups and it's going to, you know, kind of, you're going to have flare-ups and that's not helpful either. It kind of cranks up the nervous system and makes the pain worse. So yoga can help us with this discernment or help the person discern, okay, what are my boundaries and how much can I push and how little. And it's a process and it changes. It's a moving target. But that to me, like there's not really any, well, I shouldn't say there's any system out there because I don't know all the systems in the world, but there's not a lot of systems that built in all of these practices, all of these concepts and philosophies that help people discern, right? And make these decisions. So it's beautiful. So I love that self-efficacy or the self-management part of it and the long-term management part of it. So yoga is something it can be accessible, but it can be something that people can do, after their therapy, they can do on their own, they can do in groups. So then you have that social aspect of it and you're normal. Like people that have persisting pain, they're not patients all the time, right? Like they're not medically unstable. They're living normal. They're just normal people and they want to go to a yoga class or they want to, they don't need to always be in rehab. And so what I love about yoga is that it offers this opportunity to, hey, you can be a part of, you can come to any yoga class. Well, it has to be pain informed. That's a whole other topic. It has to,
but it can
inclusive, but it can be, we can make those happen.
Yeah. And I just love how you described it. It really is a system to help us come back home to ourselves when the pain is kind of brought us, become our identity or clouded our connection to self, even just understandably, we don't want to associate awareness with that area that brings pain. So we become detached. And I feel that what you described, like our role as the person working with somebody with pain, we're not telling them what to do. I feel like that's really what, for me, a shift from how I used to practice with old tools and how I'm practicing now is I'm a guide, but we're in it together. And each person is very different where we start, what we do. But like you said, it's that helping someone cultivate that relationship to self, coming home to self, and how they implement the tools. What, like you said, how they figure out what their edge is in a movement. Maybe they want to do a group, maybe they prefer not to, but just it's like this beautiful system to allow people to become themselves again, and not just someone, a person in pain.
Remembering, I mean, I remember one of my yoga teachers, said, yoga is about remembering. It's just such a beautiful word. And then it just even tears me up, and I remember when she said that to me, And that's all she had to say, you know, and I integrated that and, you know, to what that meant for me. And, you know, remembering to me is that, you know, remembering, like you said, who I am, like me. And that's there's the spiritual part, you know, it's that connection. Do you remember you know, and there's those yoga teachings of that part of you that doesn't change. So, because we all change, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally. That's the impermanence teaching of yoga. And it's that attachment. So here's all the yoga teachings, that attachment to that idea that maybe we're not impermanent. So if we're attached to that idea, that's going to be one of the root causes of our suffering. So right, so this, and it comes out in the process of yoga. You know, it's not going to happen in one session, but and this is all, like, it's just fascinating. I'll say this last thing because I know we probably have to wrap it up, but you know, when I'm in the I'll say again, like the pain circles, or like the pain community, so the pain science type community. So there's different Facebook groups. I go to a lot of conferences, academic pain conferences, and they're just, it's a beautiful community because they really talk about, you know, social health and social determinants of health and spirit. They're starting to get more and more into spiritual health. And so it's really neat. But it, you know, me and my yoga colleagues, like, you know, we just kind of chuckle because they're like, or sometimes it's a little frustrating, and my ego is like, hello, I've been talking about right here, you know, over here. Yes, we know this. Come, you know, come learn with us. But it's beautiful, right? To see these spaces talking more about this, but it's always really fascinating because it's kind of like, you know, you hear a presenter and you hear them talk about this, and it's like, you know, they're just trying to figure it out, and there's a lot of aha moments in the crowd, and yeah, like I said, there's some ego, right, some arrogance, and I'm just like, this is yoga, people, like, so that, but then it's exciting, right? It's like the look at what yoga is right in line with what the science is telling us. So this ancient wisdom practice. Yeah,
it's and I love how much because, like you said, unfortunately sometimes we need, for people to hear it, it needs to come from a certain lens and place, but the more ways people can hear it, amazing. And it's exciting to see how much research is coming out and the quality of it. And this book, I just can't recommend it enough. I'm not all the way through it yet, but it's full of, you know, a lot of evidence base, and still the essence of, and the traditions of yoga, which I love, because I am such a I don't want to say traditionalist, but I feel like I don't want us to lose, you know, I don't want us to water it down and change it too much that we lose, because we might not know yet why that was so important in that one point. So I just don't want to narrow our focus and adapt it too much. I still want to make sure that we go back to the origin to check, hey, why was it like that? So I love that you keep that in here too. So thank you.
Yeah, we try. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we tried hard, and all the contributors are, you know, everybody, like, they're yoga therapists and really committed to keeping the yoga and yoga therapy, and really committed to the roots, with that fine line of, like, we want to make it accessible and adapt to our contemporary audience, but not lose it. That's perfect, and not appropriate the culture. And so that's, you know, another conversation. So we want to share and ultimately for the betterment of pain care.
Thank you so much. Oh, and you're
Thank
doing amazing
you.
work. And I'm going to put a link to all the stuff that you're doing. There's, when I do the intro and outro too, I'll get into the highlighting the current offerings, and which we'll talk about. But I'd like to end with a meditation.
Okay.
And are you okay with me guiding it, or would you?
Oh, yes, go for it. Oh, I would
did
love.
you plan? Did you plan?
No, I would. There's nothing I want more right now than to receive a guided meditation from my dear friend Adrianne. Oh,
okay, it's just going to be a few minutes, but it's just to highlight
perfect.
what we talked about. And I'm inspired by this remembering that you said, and the coming home. So yeah, So wherever you are, if you're driving, maybe save this for later, but if you can, find yourself in as comfortable position as you can, whether that's sitting or lying. And we'll try to get into that space of not performing our sitting posture, but really being with our body and how it needs to be in this moment. That might mean our shoulders come forward a little. It might mean the head comes down. Just find that position that feels spacious for you and safe. And see if you can bring some ease into your spine. Feel grounded in your sitting bones, supported on the surface you're on. Let's bring that awareness of where we might still be holding a bit of tension around the eyes, around the face, around the jaw, and softening wherever you can. And maybe witnessing areas that aren't quite ready to let go. Try and soften your belly and trying to soften the pelvic floor. Bringing that awareness to our body. And then let's start to become aware of the temperature of the air against our skin. And exploring the internal climate. As we go deeper, coming home to ourselves. Coming to that place of remembering. Without judgment of what is there or what comes up. Simply noticing. Remembering. Notice if areas started to tense. See if you can soften. Allowing your breath to almost breathe itself. And then trying to catch that wave of the next inhale, inviting just a more spacious breath in. And see if you can follow the breath out. Explore the bottom of the exhale. One more like that. Explore the spaciousness of the inhale. And then explore the bottom of the exhale. And you can begin to gently open the eyes if they were closed. And we'll transition our body back to wakefulness. Okay. Wow. Part 2. Thank you so much, Shelly, for being here, for all you do, for all that you bring out and put into the world. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have these conversations and to be able to have this connection with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for that beautiful meditation.
And a big thank you again to Shelly Prosko for sharing her wisdom and time. And yeah, be sure to check out the link in our podcast here with the show notes for the information of where you can find resources and some of the articles that Shelly discussed, as well where you can get her book, Yoga and Science in Pain Care, Treating the Person in Pain. I hope you have a beautiful day from wherever you are, and please leave us a feedback or rating and share this with whoever you think could benefit.